Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight, where we look at what's really going on in the world of the BRICS. In the future, Russia's going to honour the US President Joe Biden and probably the EU head Ursula von der Leyen with a few monuments. There's been few leaders of countries or organisations that have done more to advance Russia's development and radically change its economy, and to do so for the better and improvement than Dementia Joe and the Chaos Queen Ursula. The last European leader who attacked Russia was the Austrian Mr. Schicklgruber, who invaded with the largest land army ever assembled and caused massive destruction to the country, killed millions of its citizens, as well as destroying large parts of many of its cities and its industries. In the end, though, like his counterpart, the French midget, no, not Macron, Napoleon, he left Russia demoralised and defeated. In contrast, the attacks by Dementia Joe and the EU Empress of Failure, Ursula von der Leyen, used sanctions have far from destroying Russia's economy, but have strengthened it and made it focus on self-sufficiency and the internal development of its industrial base, plus to focus on self-sufficiency in all aspects of its industrial sectors. Now, 2 years on, we can see the attacks by Dementia Joe and the Chaos Queen have not turned the ruble to rubble, Biden, or turned the Russian economy into tatters, Ursula. In fact, the attacks by them have met the same defeats as the German and French aggressors met before them. Now, let's look back. Since the early 90s, the actions in the corridors of Davos pushed the Russian economy off its sovereign track. This resulted in Russia becoming an economic colony of the G7 countries. It exported oil and gas supplies in exchange for technology and later consumer goods. It seemed a simple and understandable undertaking that didn't require any serious administrative and creative feats from the Russian population and its elites. Russia as a country is rich in natural resources, and its population is relatively small in comparison to the vast territory and the reserves of commodities that it possesses. So the simple business of trading in the treasures of the motherland would ensure its continued existence for decades. It was challenging to abandon this type of economic model due to the simple arithmetic. The extraction of raw materials sometimes yields around 60 to 7% return on capital. This is the extraction of potash fertilizer and palladium, for example. In the worst case, it's 30 to 50% in the case of oil and gas, depending on global commodity prices. Now, given such a high rate of return in the raw materials and commodities sector, it's challenging to encourage businesses to invest in other industries and semi-finished goods. Why invest in mechanical engineering or technology when the return on investments is 10, 20 kopecks for every ruble invested? Joe Biden's actions, followed by the vassals of the EU and the G7, have had a significant impact on the Russian economy. By closing the door to the Western world, it forced Russia to move away from its long-standing reliance on the West, particularly Europe. This created opportunities for domestic enterprises as Western companies have been forced by pressures of the governments to leave their long-established positions in Russia. Some have been able, in Russia, have been able to purchase well-established local businesses at a fraction of their original value, like McDonald's, for example. It's now nice and tasty. These businesses are now operating to the usual high global standards. The sanctions have also specifically targeted the Russian elite, forcing them to react, bear losses, and relocate their capital, property, and families to Russia. Now, this has brought back tens of billions of dollars in capital, as they realised that the West could steal their assets at any time just because they had a Russian passport. This has led to a shift in investment strategies with a focus on domestic development opportunities, as the capital that came back was looking for places to invest. One notable example is the construction of an aluminum plant for Rosal in the Leningrad region. Another is the implementation of a lithium project by Norilsk Nickel and Rosatom. Now, there are many more projects that I've covered in a number of other videos in the agricultural sector and engineering, so do check them out. I mean, the sanctions have had a significant impact also on export businesses, forcing the managers of the companies to diversify their previous sales markets of Europe and the US and focus on markets in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and obviously their partners in the BRICS. I mean, selling diesel has proved to be a more straightforward process than certainly oil-marked euros, while nitrogen fertilizers, polymers, unlike natural gas, are not tied to a specific trading hub. I mean, the new export model has necessitated the development of new logistics routes for the sale of large tonnage products, including oil, coal, LNG, ores and metals. And this has led to demand for new railways, the North-South Transport Corridor, the Eastern Siberia Pacific Railway, the expansion of the Eastern Polygon, and the great interest in shipping along the Northern Sea Route, the Great Siberian Rivers, and the sudden appearance again of the long-forgotten White Sea-Baltic Canal on the radars of logisticians. Now, before I continue, I'd like you to consider supporting the channel and the website SCO BRICS Insight with a small donation, which you can do by clicking the thanks button at the bottom of the screen. This will help me grow the channel and the website, and I thank all of you in advance for your support. Now, back to the sanctions. Most of the significant impact of the sanctions was trying to restrict Russia's access to high-tech products. And it's also worth noting that grey imports have remained very, very active. I mean, if there's a necessity for a product, it can be purchased but at a higher price. Consequently, any purchasing manager will initially seek to source an item in Russia, as it may be possible to find it's now manufactured locally. If not, then the search moves on to China. If the item is not available in that country, then the purchaser will order it through parallel imports using friendly countries like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkey or Kyrgyzstan. In other words, the West took the initiative to protect Russia's market from foreign competitors without it having to leave the WTO. I mean, all these trends have been validated by the Russian government statistics agency, Rosstat. I mean, the agency recently released its data on industrial production for January to May 2024 in Russia, which showed a 5.2% increase in production in Russia. Also being accurate to suggest that there's been a corresponding decrease in butter consumption and a corresponding increase in armaments production, as in more guns, less butter, that happened during Soviet times when consumer goods took second place to producing military hardware. Now, it's notable that high-tech production in Russia, including electronics, computers, optics and optical goods, has experienced a 39% increase, while metal products have grown by 35%. In just 3 years, both industry sectors have doubled in size, and it's evident that demand for such products is primarily influenced by the government's budget for these type of things. However, the production of electrical equipment this year grew by 10.2%, beverages by 11%, furniture, for example, was 44%, and pharmaceuticals by a low 17.5%. Now, over the past 3 years, these industries have actually grown by 1.3 to 1.5 times. So, I mean, the current state of manufacturing industry is booming as domestic companies are involved in import substitution. For the past 3 years, the dynamics of oil production and ferrous metal production have remained relatively stable. Gas production has been in decline, but that's likely to change as domestic companies use the cheap gas available because of the drop in export volumes to Europe for the development of plants for the production of chemicals and fertilizers. Now, the market, global markets for those is growing, and the European share in the production has collapsed due to the high cost of energy since they rejected Russian hydrocarbons. So the market is certainly there. I mean, the imposition of sanctions was supposed to be highly destructive to the Russian economy. I mean, the losses that Russia was supposed to incur as a result of the imposition of these so-called shock and awe sanctions was predicted to be in the hundreds of billions of dollars, leading to a collapse in the Russian economy and lead to a regime change in Russia. Well, that didn't work out too well for Dementia Joe and fond of Lyon now, did it? However, As the Russian economy was forced to adapt to new circumstances, it was able to find new markets, exploit new demands, and develop new trade and financial payment systems, bypassing all the restrictions imposed by the Western sanctions, including the banning by SWIFT. Now, the major problem with sanctions is they're thought up and imposed by politicians who are actually idiots, who don't actually understand business, commerce, or human ingenuity. I mean, when have sanctions ever worked before? Even the sanctions on Iran and Venezuela didn't work, so what likelihood was there going to be that sanctions on Russia would work when it's a major producer of so many things that the world needs on a day-to-day basis? And these range from hydrocarbons, chemicals, fertilizers, wheat, grains, metals, and other things. Plus, the rest of the world are not under the thumb of the US. They are not the useful idiots of the US, and they were not likely to join the sanctions, so they were doomed to fail. Now, this shake-up was well overdue. The Russian economy has not just withstood everything that the US and its useful idiots have thrown at it, plus it's matured, developed, and prospered in a way that nobody thought was possible. Now its economy is no longer dependent on the West in any shape or form. It's self-sufficient in food production, and that includes the main things like grains, meat, poultry, and fish. It's also now a major exporter of all of these products to world markets, but particularly to friendly countries in Asia, Africa, Central and Latin America. Now, what has occurred in the past 10 years has been an economic miracle, which has resulted in a complete transformation in the size and quality of the Russian economy, which in turn has enhanced the Russian economy's stability. The economy of Russia and the lives of its citizens is no longer determined by factors like the cost of a barrel of oil on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the price of gas or wheat at the International Commodities Exchange. Russia is now in control of its economy and is not dependent on the corrupt bankers of the West. It's also successfully helped the BRICS, along with its partners, including China and India, usher in a new and exciting multipolar world, which will benefit all those countries in the world who've had to suffer for the predatory practices of the US and the institutions that they control. Russia's shown that there's another way to do things, and it's not going to do what the US tells it to do on the pain of war or regime change. Russia's changed the world for the better now. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. If you've enjoyed this video, you could help me fund the channel and the website SCOBRICSInsight.com by clicking the thanks button on the screen. Thank you, and I'll see you all again soon.